You cannot tell me that Dusty Locane
That's what I rock on my feet, but I could throw in that Dior. Give me more than he means.
does not sound exactly like Pop Smoke.
Billie Jean, Christian Dior, Dior. I'm up in all the stores.
Now you might want to say, oh, Pop Smoke isn't the only rapper with a deep voice, he isn't the only drill rapper. Well, both of those things are true. There are plenty of drill rappers I've listened to, plenty with deep voices, and none of them sound like this. It's not so much the fact that Dusty Locane has a deep voice like Pop Smoke, he's also using pretty much exactly the same ad-libs, has the same growl, and is making music that's very similar to Pop Smoke's. So to call him a clone is not out of the question. Pop Smoke very quickly became one of the biggest drill rappers from New York, growing a massive fan base in just a few years, and a lot of that fan base unfortunately coming after he, well, died. Pop Smoke has one of the most recognizable voices, with his deep cadence and his drill beats behind his music. When you hear a Pop Smoke song, you know that it is Pop Smoke. He very quickly became one of the most well-known drill rappers, and currently still has a lot of hype around his name. A lot of that hype starting to come last year when his songs started to blow up on TikTok. Now, he was starting to grow beforehand, and if he hadn't have died, he would have been a massive artist to begin with. And the reason why I say he would have been a big artist is because of all of the massive features that he was able to get on his album. Now, Pop Smoke did unfortunately die February 19th of 2020. And then just a few months later, in July of 2020, this new artist, Dusty Locane, suddenly showed up. He only has 3 songs listed on every streaming platform, has over 1.3 million monthly listeners, and none of his social media accounts existed before July of 2020. I unintentionally came across Dusty Locane's music a few weeks ago on TikTok, and at first I honestly thought it was Pop Smoke. Just because of the little clip of Dusty Locane's music that blew up on TikTok, you cannot tell me that this does not sound like Pop Smoke.
30 on me and some chops. All my niggas really rock. Roll, control. Some my layos, you know how my niggas move.
He has that deep voice, he's over a drill beat, and he has a very similar ad-lib structure as well as cadence to, well, Pop Smoke. Dusty Locane's very first Instagram post, July 12th of 2020, was him standing in front of a mural of Pop Smoke. Keep in mind, this was before he had released any of his current music. Now, you may be thinking, well, maybe he just got inspiration from Pop Smoke. Well, that could be very true, but at least right now, he sounds very similar to Pop Smoke. But the only really big difference I can hear between Dusty Locane and Pop Smoke is that Dusty Locane just so happens to rap a little bit slower to his music. But if Pop Smoke had even one song that was a little bit slower, people wouldn't be surprised, which is part of why I initially thought this was a Pop Smoke song. In an interview, Dusty Locane claims that he and Pop Smoke actually went to the same elementary school, claiming that they just so happened to know each other, considering they are both from the same part of Brooklyn, New York, and they are both part of the Wu. For those of you who don't know, the Wu is, well, a gang. The Wu is a gang that both of them were part of. Now, whether or not they actually knew each other, I don't know, but you can't say that they aren't very similar artists. Now, there is a chance he had music prior that we don't know about, that he maybe deleted off of SoundCloud, or that was possibly under a different name, but through some investigative research, I could not find evidence of either of those things being true. And honestly, it is a little bit strange to me that Dusty Locane only has 3 songs, didn't start releasing music until a few months ago, had no social media until a few months ago, and suddenly has 3 songs with millions of plays. And he has a distribution deal with Empire. Empire is the same distribution that XXXTentacion had used. So for Dusty Locane to have 3 songs that sound exactly like Pop Smoke, have a distribution deal with Empire that he actually claims to have had 4 to 5 months ago in an interview, there's something going on here that we don't really know about. Part of me is almost thinking that he is an industry plant put together by some sort of label. And I want to make it clear that if he is an industry plant, I really don't care. He makes good music. I enjoy Dusty Locane's music. I want to make that clear. I definitely see Dusty Locane having a massive potential for his future, even if he is an industry plant. But regardless, he does sound like Pop Smoke. And the fact that his first ever Instagram post, July 12th of 2020, is him standing in front of a mural of Pop Smoke just goes to really prove the point that he probably is just a clone. But, you know, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that he just got inspiration from Pop Smoke, just really enjoyed Pop Smoke's music. I wanted to make something similar to what Pop Smoke did. Well, that is totally okay. Rappers do this all the time. I talked about this before in my DeAndre and Scarlord video. DeAndre and Scarlord have very similar music, are both from the same country, look very similar. It's similar, but you can tell that there's differences. But in the case of Dusty Locane, well, there is the difference where Dusty Locane does have a slower flow to his music. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. Now, I do have no evidence of what I'm about to say, it is pure speculation, but here is what I think happened. I think that Dusty Locane probably had music that he had up on SoundCloud or on Spotify somewhere prior. A label, possibly Empire, which is just a distribution group, but somewhere somebody found his music, heard him, and said that he sounds just like Pop Smoke. They came in, talked to Dusty Locane, and said, hey, we're gonna blow up your music, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take your music, make it sound exactly like Pop Smoke, throw it at a ton of influencers, a ton of TikTok influencers, a ton of TikTok stars, and get them to make videos dancing to your music. Now, that is completely speculative, but I think that's kind of what happened. I think that a label picked him up, said that he sounded like Pop Smoke, and said, we're gonna distribute this, make you really big. Because there's no reason why an artist with only 3 songs should have millions of plays like this, unless they were pushed by a label, unless they are well an industry plant. Now, I am not saying that it is not possible for an artist to do all of this themselves, but it does look a little bit fishy with how quickly he was able to blow up. Especially when you start to notice there are a lot of verified creators on TikTok with millions of followers making videos to his sound. A lot of people thinking that this is Pop Smoke, because there was always a chance, oh, this might be just a Pop Smoke unreleased song, especially with just a little snippet you hear on TikTok. It's entirely possible for you to think that. Now, I do want to give Dusty Locane the benefit of the doubt. There's a very, very good chance that he just gets inspiration from Pop Smoke, which I would not doubt. And while he may sound like Pop Smoke now, a year from now, 2 years from now, he probably won't. He will have developed his own sound, his own flow, and his own fan base. This happens all the time. It's not unusual for a new artist to sound like an artist who already blew up. They sound similar for the first year, 2, even 3 years, and then over time develop their own sound. There are plenty of artists who people think sound like X, plenty of artists who people think sound like Drake, and then kind of develop their own sound over time. And for somebody like Dusty Locane to do that, I would not be surprised. But I really think that all of this was planned by some sort of label. And my biggest reasoning for thinking that is, as I mentioned, the picture of him standing in front of a mural of Pop Smoke, and that being his first ever picture on Instagram. That to me shows that this entire thing was planned. I think that he knows that he sounds like Pop Smoke. Now, I do need to say that Pop Smoke is definitely a very unique artist, and there is nobody who can replace Pop Smoke. I'm not saying that Dusty Locane will replace Pop Smoke. What I am saying is that for the time being, with only these 3 songs being released by Dusty Locane, that he does sound a lot like Pop Smoke. And I do really, really think this entire thing was planned by some sort of label. And even if this entire thing was planned by a label, making his music sound just like Pop Smoke, getting him to work with producers who are very similar to the producers of Pop Smoke, I frankly do not care if that is the case. Dusty Locane does have some good music. I definitely think that he's going to be a big artist over these next few years, assuming that his label does the correct things. I see too often these guys who are industry plants come up sounding like an artist and then suddenly fall off because the label kind of ditches them because they made a bunch of money off the artist, and they don't see that happening any further. Assuming Dusty Locane does put out music in the correct way, I really think Dusty Locane will have a big future potential, and I think in the next year to 2 years, Dusty Locane will have developed his own sound and will no longer sound like Pop Smoke. And if anything, I almost hope that happens, because like I mentioned kind of briefly, I actually like Dusty Locane's music. I'm a big fan of Pop Smoke, so of course I'm going to enjoy an artist who sounds very similar to Pop Smoke's music. Now, if Dusty Locane does continue to make music that people are always going to think sound like Pop Smoke, it's just gonna hurt his career. All this is gonna do is it's gonna be like, oh, you got some hype, and then he's gonna fall off. I would very much rather see this be more of a Tokyo's Revenge, XXX and Tentacion type of situation, where people at first thought these sounded very similar, was a clone, but very quickly realized that, oh, he's his own artist. Now, I know that there are going to be people who say, oh, it's just because he has a deep voice and makes drill music. They both do make drill music, they both have deep voices, they're both part of the Woo, which is the gang, and they're both from the same part of Brooklyn, New York. So to say that he's not a clone, or at least gathering inspiration from Pop Smoke, you're obviously lying to yourself. And to be honest, if his label is trying to get him just to copy Pop Smoke for clout, just to get some quick cash in their pockets, all it's gonna do is hurt Dusty Locane's career. But to be entirely honest, I do genuinely think this whole thing was planned out by some sort of label or distribution company, basically saying, hey, we're gonna get you a ton of clout because you sound like Pop Smoke. I really genuinely think that's what happened. But I could be totally wrong about that. He could be a unique artist who nobody's heard before. He just suddenly started making music. But there is no denying the fact that he at least gathered inspiration from Pop Smoke. You can't deny that. But I want you to let me know, do you think that Dusty Locane is just copying Pop Smoke, as a clone of Pop Smoke? He just gathered inspiration from Pop Smoke, or they are completely different artists and sound nothing alike? Let me know what you think is true. But with all that said, hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you are somebody who makes music, make sure to join my Discord server, link down below, and hop on my next YouTube live stream. I live stream every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time listening to your music. So if you want me to listen to your music, hop on that live stream next Saturday. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any other future videos that I post. And if you did stay to the end of this video, chances are you'll enjoy the rest of the videos that I make. So click on these playlists popping up on screen and go and binge some of my content. But with all that said, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.